Life will become bitter for them, without doubt. They cannot think that they've hit us, and it's over. No.
More is on the way. The regime doesn't know what hit them. They don't know what will hit them.
If you have been asking yourself why Israel hit Iran multiple times, in multiple waves, and what that means for Africa, you are in the right place. Firstly, let me show you an image that answers why exactly Israel hit Iran and why they targeted the sites that they targeted. And remember, our Northern Star, our primary goal, is to place this attack within the context of Africa. This here is a satellite image of Natanz nuclear site. Natanz nuclear site is Iran's most significant nuclear enrichment site. Just after 4 a.m. local time on Friday 13th June, Israeli jets struck Natanz nuclear site repeatedly. That attack didn't just happen. It had been decades in the making. It was one of multiple waves of attacks on Iran that morning. In a national address later on 13th June, Netanyahu referred to these waves of attacks as Operation Rising Lion. According to the Israeli Defense Forces, Iran has enough uranium to weaponize to nuclear levels for 15 nuclear weapons within days. They say that that's why Israel had to act now. How they know that is anyone's guess. So let's talk about what we do know. We know that dozens of Israeli aircraft participated in an initial wave of strikes on dozens of military targets. Military targets, Iran nuclear sites, and some civilian locations. Early on Friday morning, dozens have been killed. They include civilians. Let's dig deeper now, because the truth often hides a little bit deeper. Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been Prime Minister for a combined total of 17 years, has been claiming for years that Iran represents an existential threat to Israel. On September 28, 2012, Netanyahu gave the famous or infamous Red Line speech at the United Nations.
And nothing could imperil our common future more than the arming of Iran with nuclear weapons. In the case of Iran's nuclear plans to build a bomb, this bomb has to be filled with enough enriched uranium. And Iran has to go through 3 stages. The first stage, they have to enrich enough low-enriched uranium. The second stage, they have to enrich enough medium-enriched uranium. And the third stage and final stage, they have to enrich enough high-enriched uranium for the first bomb. Where's Iran? Iran's completed the first stage. Took them many years, but they completed it, and they're 70% of the way there. Now they're well into the second stage. And by next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb. Ladies and gentlemen, what I've told you now is not based on secret information. It's not based on military intelligence. It's based on the public reports of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Anybody could read them. They're online. So if these are the facts, and they are, where should a red line be drawn? A red line should be drawn right here. Before Iran completes the second stage of nuclear enrichment necessary to make a bomb, before Iran gets to a point where it's a few months away or a few weeks away from amassing enough enriched uranium to make a nuclear weapon. And I believe that faced with a clear red line, Iran will back down. And this will give more time for sanctions and diplomacy to convince Iran to dismantle its nuclear weapons program altogether.
In that speech, he visually outlined a cartoon bomb to warn the international community. He stated that once Iran stockpiles enough 20% enriched uranium, which he called a red line, it would be only weeks away from a bomb, making it an existential threat to Israel. He asserted that a nuclear-armed Iran would be a direct threat to Israel's existence. What most people didn't realize at that time was that Israel was already at an advanced stage of planning the ongoing attacks on Iran. We shall get into that later. To understand June 13th, the date that Israel executed its Operation Rising Lion, we need to scrutinize another date, 7th June 1981. On this date, 44 years ago, the Israeli Air Force destroyed an unfinished Iraqi nuclear reactor at Osirak near Baghdad. That's when Israel signaled that they were fully prepared to strike decisively at nuclear facilities of hostile states, deemed to present a clear and present threat to Israel. Considering Iraq's unfinished nuclear reactor was child's play compared to what's going on at Iran's Natanz nuclear site, Israel has been salivating and preparing for the attacks on Iran that began on June 13th. Remember, don't forget at the back of your mind that for us in Africa, for us as Africans, our Northern Star is to understand what all this means for Africa. So please share in the comment section your thoughts on this. Back in 2007, a secret collabo between Israel and the United States birthed and deployed the sophisticated and powerful Stuxnet malicious computer worm. Within 3 years, by 2010, this worm achieved its purpose. It had achieved a great deal in damaging Iran's nuclear program. The worm did this by targeting and silently sabotaging specific industrial machines, especially the centrifuges used to enrich uranium. How did this malicious computer worm achieve this? By making the centrifuge spin at damaging speeds while showing normal readings to operators. As such, Stuxnet became the first known cyber weapon to cause real-world physical destruction. It showed how cyber attacks could be used in modern warfare to disrupt critical infrastructure without firing a single bullet. Despite Israel's attack on Natanz, Iran's nuclear facilities remain largely intact. That's because key components of these facilities are buried underground. It would take highly sophisticated military weaponry like this massive ordnance penetrator to damage these facilities. This penetrator is a 13,000 kilogram bunker buster. You can be sure that Israel and the US have been working long and hard over many years trying to figure out exactly how they can penetrate Iran's famously well-guarded, seemingly impenetrable bunkers. Israel may not have managed to penetrate those bunkers to cause fatal damage to Iran's nuclear facilities, but they have definitely clawed deeply at these facilities. The June 13th operation hit scores of Iranian targets. In addition to the Natanz nuclear facilities, they also hit the Isfahan and Fordo facilities. It was a concerted, multi-pronged attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. Before I go to what I think is Iran's most consequential June 13th loss, let's look at Iran's military human loss. First of all, let me state clearly at this point that I, DJ Bokali, do not support the killing of others just because they wave a different flag to the one you do, just because their beliefs are different from yours. I don't support that. I hope that one day the world will realize that military solutions are simply painkillers at best. Just as painkillers can never decisively tackle cancerous tumors, military action just can't root out the systemic issues that breed conflict. Back to the unfolding Iran-Israel conflict, the Israeli strikes killed around 20 senior Iranian military leaders. They include those that are on this list. On this list is Hossein Salami, the chief of Iran's powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guards military branch. This was a decapitation strike of rare boldness and precision. Israel didn't just target Iran's war plans. It beheaded the very command structure of its military machine. These were not mid-level officers, but towering strategists behind Iran's missile programs, military doctrine, and regional operations. By killing them, Israel disrupted Iran's chain of command and sowed confusion in its defense architecture and sent an unmistakable signal: no rank is too high to be touched. It was a psychological warfare as much as it was physical, a blow designed to fracture Iran's sense of invincibility from the top down. Israel also targeted a key component of the Iranian nuclear weapon program that cannot be easily replaced: Iran's nuclear scientists, the leading brains behind Iran's nuclear stride. Many of these scientists were killed while at home with their families. They were not in those military locations or even at the nuclear sites, but at home. There's a lot to unpack there. Among those killed in the Israeli raids are Faridun Abbasi, a former head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization. He had publicly stated that he was prepared to build an Iranian nuclear bomb. Also killed was renowned nuclear scientist Mohammad Mehdi Tehranchi. He was also the head of Azad University in Tehran. Israel also targeted and killed other nuclear scientists. They eliminated Ahmad Reza Zolfagari, a nuclear engineering professor at Shahid Beheshti University. By eliminating these key figures, Israel struck not just at facilities, but at the very intellect and continuity of Iran's nuclear ambitions. These scientists were the architects of Iran's nuclear future, custodians of sensitive knowledge and experimental programs that cannot easily be replaced. The operation aimed to paralyze these programs by severing its brainpower, one assassination at a time.
They started this, and now they've launched a war. We will not let them get away with this large-scale crime. The forces of the Islamic Republic will deliver huge blows to the Zionist regime. My dear people should know that we have no shortcomings in delivering an answer to this.
This morning of June 14th, Rocket sirens sounded all across most of Israel. Iran, a military power in its own right, has already begun retaliation. Later, on June 13th and early on June 14th, Iran launched at least 4 rounds of attacks on Israel. Consequently, at least 63 people in Israel were wounded. 1 was killed. The Israeli Defense Forces, however, claimed that the majority of Iranian missiles were either intercepted or they missed their targets altogether. But don't forget, though, that in war, half of what you hear from either side is often propaganda. It's a critical part of the very ecosystem of war because it reinforces perceptions and builds narratives. Iranian missiles hit this building in central Israel. This photo is more credible than 1,000 words of propaganda. There's a lot more to talk about regarding this escalating conflict and how it affects Africa. We will talk about that in the coming days. Africa will be affected in multiple ways. Today, let's conclude by talking about one of those ways, oil. Fuel prices will rise. If this conflict disrupts oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, global oil prices will spike. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway between Iran and Oman, through which about 20% of the world's oil passes. Iran borders and partly controls this vital choke point, giving it leverage over any conflict. If tensions with Israel escalate, Iran could threaten to block the strait, to pressure the world or retaliate against Israeli or Western actions. Such a move would disrupt global oil supplies, spiking prices and triggering economic ripples across the world, including Africa, where many countries depend on imported fuel. That's why today we, the people of Africa, are demanding for a Pan-African initiative to build oil refineries right here on African soil. It's unacceptable that our oil-producing nations export crude only to import refined fuel at high costs. This dependence keeps us poor and vulnerable to foreign conflicts like this Iran-Israel crisis. We must unite, governments, regional blocs, and investors, to build and operate refineries that serve our people and our neighbors. Let this be an African-led effort, not left to individual countries or investors like Dangote. He has done a great job building the oil refinery in Nigeria, but that alone is far from enough. Refining our oil right here in Africa means cheaper fuel, more jobs, stronger economies, and real energy independence. The time for action is now. See you again tomorrow as we unpack this Iran-Israeli conflict and dig deeper on what it means for Africa.